next speaker, who is Dr. Manjul Dutt. Manjul received his master's from the University of Kentucky and his PhD from the University of Florida. Go Gators. He is recently and currently a research scientist at the University of Florida IFAS Citrus Research and Education Center here in Lake Alfred. Manjul utilizes conventional breeding and somatic fusion techniques for the transfer of HLB resistance from citrus relatives with a focus on the Australian citrus species. Manjul has a large population of diploid, triploid, and tetraploid hybrids under field evaluation and 2 improved finger lime varieties. We saw a preview of that in the previous conversation, and they've been released in 2021. His presentation title this afternoon is Development of New Finger Lime Cultivars at UF. Dr. Dutt.
Hello, everyone. And David, it was an excellent presentation. I learned so much. I've been working on finger limes for a long time now, and there was so much new information that I learned from David's presentation today. Just fantastic. And as David mentioned, we have two new finger limes that we have released, and my presentation today will actually describe in detail as to those finger limes, and I'll take you through several slides, and hopefully at the end of this presentation you'll be able to get a different perspective about what cultivars are available at the University of Florida. So having said this, finger limes, it's a citrus relative, as we know. It's in the past, as David mentioned, it was classified as microcitrus because of the small leaves, and now it has been reclassified by Maberly as Citrus australasica. It's a thorny understory shrub or small tree, and the juice vesicles are globular, and they're likened to caviar. Finger limes are native to Australia, as David has mentioned, and several finger lime cultivars were introduced into the United States in the past 50 years. So when we started working on finger limes, our key emphasis was to look at finger limes and its benefit in helping Florida citrus industry because of its perceived tolerance to Huang Longbing. For those of you who are not from Florida, Huang Longbing is a deadly bacterial disease that is almost destroying the Florida citrus industry. And most of the commercially cultivated varieties in Florida are very susceptible to HLB. So there's a lot of research going on to look at to develop varieties that can be tolerant to HLB and to actually release these varieties. So we started working with finger limes almost 12 years back. And since then, we've been evaluating these finger limes. We've made, as Ruth mentioned, a large population of hybrids. They're both diploid, triploid, and tetraploid hybrids. And we have been evaluating them out in the field. In Florida, most of our groves are almost 100% infected with Huang Longbing disease. And so evaluating them in the field gives us a real-time snapshot of whether some of these finger lime hybrids and cultivars that we have will actually be tolerant to Huang Longbing in the field. Another advantage of growing the finger limes is that early on we realized that it had similar cultural conditions to commercial citrus. Just like you have commercial citrus that are budded onto rootstocks, you can bud finger lime onto rootstocks. It's pretty easy to bud finger lime onto many different rootstocks. And there has been in the last few years an increasing demand in the domestic and international markets for these finger lime cultivars. The primary use for the finger lime, as David mentioned again, is as a garnish in raw and cooked preparations. And you can see here in the photo of finger lime, these finger lime pearls or the citrus caviar being used as a garnish. So a lot of articles have been published in the past. And, when I started working on this, I didn't have much information at all about what finger limes were. And then I read this article that David Karp had published way back in December 2009. And, this got piqued my interest, and I was able to actually follow up and, start working on this. And I'm glad I did that, to be honest with you. In Florida, we don't have too many finger lime cultivars compared to what you will see coming out from California. We have 3 older selections that are available from the Florida Citrus Budwood Program. And you also have to remember that in order for you to grow finger limes or any citrus in Florida, you have to have trees that were propagated from budwood that comes from the Citrus Budwood Program. And those budwoods have been certified to be clean of all sorts of bacteria and virus and viroids, and they can be safely planted out in the field. So we have the DPI 50-36, which has a pale pink pulp, and most of the time the pulp is white in color, but we have seen the pulp turn pale pink following prolonged cold stress. We have the DPI 205-1, which is a white pulp, and the commercial variety that is popular in California and Hawaii, the VI 697, which I introduced a few years back into Florida. Last year, we also released 2 new varieties, the UF Sun Lime and the UF Red Lime. And the rest of my presentation will actually detail about these 2 cultivars that we have developed for the benefit of the stakeholders. There is very limited acreage. There are only a few growers right now in Florida, and at best, estimates between 7 and 10 acres of finger limes are being cultivated statewide. But with the recent interest in finger limes, we expect this acreage to grow up exponentially in the coming few years, especially as newer varieties become available for propagation. The most significant challenge for cultivation has been the harvest. Finger limes are extremely thorny, and harvesting finger limes can be a huge challenge, especially with some of these older cultivars that tend to produce fruit inside the tree. And our research and breeding focus was to develop cultivars that were not so thorny and had more of an open canopy structure that would allow the grower to harvest trees with a little more ease than what we have right now. This is a slide that you've seen. David also presented this slide, so I'll not go much into detail with it. The first 3 are what I consider the true finger lime varieties that are available with DPI. You'll see that some of these were introduced way back in 1977, like the finger lime DPI 205-1. The DPI 205-4 and the Sydney hybrid are also classified in the finger lime category, but I do not consider them to be, the finger lime of commerce, because Sydney hybrid, it doesn't taste well, and the finger lime DPI 205-4 does not have that citrus caviar trait that is required as, that is one of the key aspects of sale for the consumers. Australia has the most acreage under finger lime cultivation. That's obvious because finger limes originated in Australia and it has been growing in Australia for many years. A lot of different varieties are available. There are small acreages in Asia, Europe, and Africa, such as in Morocco, for example. In the US, the majority of the finger limes are produced in California and Hawaii, as was so eloquently explained by David. And in Florida, we have a few growers, but the finger lime acreage is expanding slowly as more and more growers become aware of newer varieties that are available. So the University of Florida, as I mentioned, we've been working to develop finger limes for over 10 years now. We made our first process almost 11 years back. And our objective is very simple. Our objective is to utilize the existing germplasm that is available in the United States to develop varieties that can thrive under Florida's unique environments. And early on, we realized that just because a variety may do well in California doesn't necessarily mean that variety will perform well in Florida. We also needed to have varieties that have HLB tolerance. I've highlighted that in red because due to our unique conditions, it doesn't really matter if your variety is excellent if it does not have HLB tolerance. So HLB tolerance is key to have a very good variety that can be well received by the citrus or the specialty fruit growers. We need to have improved fruit quality while maintaining the caviar trait. which is the trait of commerce. Enhanced anthocyanin contact, even under consistent warm conditions, would be good, because finger limes, there's a lot of interest in finger limes in our southern counties like Broward County and Miami-Dade County, and they wanted to grow these finger limes as we would be able to grow them even in a little colder area like Lake Alfred or Orlando. And of course, finally, you also needed to have cultivars that have good yield. So 2 varieties have been released, the UF Sun Lime and the UF Red Lime. These varieties have been selected from a large population of our hybrids, and the key aspects are attractive external appearance that enhance the fresh market potential. Several years back, we conducted a survey among potential stakeholders, and we asked them, which key aspect are you interested in a finger lime? And almost 80 to 90% of the stakeholders wanted something that had an attractive outer appearance that could be sold in the market with a nice internal red color. So this is our first finger lime that we'll talk about. This is what we call the UF Sun Lime. And as you can see, the beautiful juice vesicles that just pop out when you cut open the fruit. And it really, really enhances the quality of this cultivar. So the fruit weight, it's a big fruit compared to any finger lime that you have seen. Since it's a hybrid, as David had mentioned earlier, the fruit size is quite big. It ranges from anywhere from 26.14 grams to 34.66 grams. We have even harvested fruit very sparingly that have almost been up to 50 grams. But that's not the average. Average is between 26 to 34. The fruit length ranges from 2.8 to 3 inches, and the average number of seeds, it ranges from 0 to 6. And now this cultivar would be one variety that could be grown under screens. And we think that if there is minimal cross-pollination between the finger lime and other citrus varieties nearby, you would get low to no seeds, whereas more cross-pollination would result in higher number of seeds. Because when you see the finger lime trees, you will find fruits that have, in the same tree, fruits that are seedless to fruits that have anywhere from 2 to 6 seeds. It makes a medium-sized scraggly bush. So in Lake Alfred, where we have a lot of data on this UF Sun Lime, the 7-year-old trees were approximately 8 feet tall in Lake Alfred, so it's not very tall. We quickly realized that the anthocyanin content in the pulp is not cold dependent. That is a huge benefit, that you don't need a prolonged cold stress to have the nice red color. The sun lime is very precocious. We found that budded trees, they produce fruit in the first year after planting. And in some cases, we have trees that we have budded that flower and fruit in the greenhouse, even before we plant them out in the field. So you will be able to get a little bit of yield from the first year onwards. And by the year 3, you should be able to get sustained yields from these trees. These trees, they flower sporadically throughout the year. The main bloom is, however, in February, March, but you will get fruit all throughout the year. On the right-hand side is one of our trees, and you'll see that it's, as I mentioned, it's a kind of like a scraggly bush, makes lovely flowers, and the leaves are quite bigger. If you were to compare, if you have seen a regular finger lime leaf, these leaves are 5 to 8 times bigger than a regular finger lime leaf. We don't have very much yield data because it's a new cultivar. However, it is estimated that a 6-year-old mature tree can produce approximately 150 fruits per tree. We have not observed any graft incompatibility, but we recommend rootstocks without trifoliate orange genetics because that provides the highest vigor to these trees compared to other rootstocks like Puharske or Swingle, which tends to dwarfen the tree a bit. On the left-hand side is a photograph of some of the immature fruits. And on the right-hand side, you'll see photographs of some mature fruits. and they have colored, and you'll see that they have colored up really well. This photograph was taken probably in around February, after we had a little cold chill, and it colors up really well. So the limitations of this cultivar is it's susceptible to fungus that causes citrus scab. It's not a major issue, but you do see sporadic citrus scab on this fruit. You may need to do manual thinning because it has a tendency to overcrop, especially in the initial years, and the fruit size is not uniform if it's overcropped. It is HLB tolerant. We have, and I'll present the data in subsequent slides. Trees had an average CT values of 30 plus minus 0.6. And with all finger lime cultivars, the fruit, once it's mature, falls off, and they do not hang on to the tree following maturity. The second cultivar that I'm going to talk about is the UF red lime. The UF red lime is more of a conventional finger lime cultivar, and it was produced process between two specific finger lime sanguina cultivars here in Florida. The average fruit weight is variable from 18.72 to 24.10 grams. The average fruit length is 2.91 to 3.92 inches. And these numbers were taken from our main research plot in Lake Alfred. I have observed fruits that are growing in our station in Homestead to be over 4.5 inches tall. This variety, UF red lime, just absolutely loves the heat and just grows like a weed in our southern counties. The average number of seeds is between 16 to 23, so this variety is a little more seedier than the UF sunlight. And if you see the leaves morphology on the top right-hand corner, you'll see that the leaf morphology is typical finger lime leaf morphology. And the photograph on the right lower corner is some of these finger lime fruits that are being produced in a tree growing in Homestead. The shape of the fruit varies. You'll see that this mature fruit in the middle is a fruit that is growing in Lake Alfred. As I mentioned, the fruit size is smaller in Lake Alfred compared to fruit in Homestead or in Miami-Dade County, where it has the ability to grow all throughout the year. In mature fruit, and on the right-hand side, you'll see a bunch of mature fruit hanging on the tree. The key characteristic of this cultivar, and one of the main reasons why we selected, is that this variety has an upright growth habit. In most of the finger lime varieties that you'll see, most of the older varieties, the finger lime varieties, they make a kind of like a bush with branches that droop down. This variety does not do that. It makes strong upright branches, and the canopy is much open, allowing you to go in and harvest fruit with much ease than some other variety that is available in the market. And that was one of the key reasons why we selected this variety for release. Plants at 6 years of age were around 6 feet tall in Lake Alfred. We measured some trees in our research plot in Homestead. 2.5-year-old trees in Homestead were over 8 feet tall. So just see the difference in the growth between Lake Alfred and Homestead, Florida. The young flush is always red in color. It's also a precocious tree. Budded trees produce some fruit in the first year after planting, but it is not as precocious as UF red lime, sunlight. Preliminary data indicates these trees to be resistant to HLB. No bacterium has been detected from these trees in any of our research plots. Trees, they flower sporadically throughout the year, just like any other finger limes. The main bloom phase is in February and March. A 6-year-old mature tree can produce approximately 80 to 90 fruits per tree when grown in a subtropical area like Lake Alfred. We have not observed any graft incompatibility. However, we recommend rootstocks without trifoliate origin genetics. They have done well with other rootstocks such as Kuharske or Swingle, for example. But if you can grow these in rootstocks like Volkamer lemon or CMAC, it might do better. Again, the limitations are that the fruit size is not uniform. In heavily cropped trees, it may require manual thinning, and fruits are prone to thorn damage. This is one of the issues that we see with a lot of the finger lime trees, because finger limes have large thorns, and you will see a certain percent of the fruit that will have sporadic thorn damage. Now, moving on, I'll just briefly talk about some of the data that we've collected on our finger limes. The UF sun lime has a triturable acidity of 3.5, while the red lime has an acidity of 2.8. If you look at the TSS to TA ratio, the UF sun lime is 2.8, while the US red lime is 4.9. So 4.9 is at the lower end of the spectrum, and the acidity and the taste would be very similar to what you would see with a lemon, because a marketable lemon should have at least a TSS/TA of 5 and above. And so red limes, these are pretty sour fruits with a lot of citric acid and pretty good malic acid content in the fruits. The DPI 50-36 we used as a control, and this is the old variety that is usually grown by most of the stakeholders in Florida. Anthocyanin content is very high in the peel and both the pulp. And when you compare with either a white pulp finger lime or the DPI 50-36, you'll see that anthocyanin content is 4 to 8 times higher in the peel and 2 to 4 times higher in the pulp. So a lot of anthocyanin in both the peel and the pulp in both the UF sun lime and UF red lime. And total antioxidant activity, which is also important, is also very high in both UF sun lime and red lime. And they're quite comparable with the other finger limes that we have in our experimental work, both in the peel as well as in the pulp. So both UF and sun lime and red lime can be easily propagated on any standard citrus rootstock. This was one of the questions that we received in the chat earlier. And tree vigor is highest in lemon-derived rootstocks. Rough lemon, Volkamer lemon, that kind of rootstocks are extremely vigorous. Tree vigor in rootstocks such as Cleopatra mandarin are much lower. We don't recommend that rootstock at this point of time. In order to produce a large population of plants, we have also optimized the in vitro propagation of these cultivars, and which is allowing us to produce a large population of finger lime plants for the benefit of the stakeholders. This is key for our Florida growers, HLB status. So as I mentioned, we have different finger lime testing sites. We have 3 sites in Lake Alfred, which is on the center of the map, Immokalee, which is in the middle, and Homestead, which is just south of Miami. When you look at the average CT values, and we collect data in all these sites on an annual basis, our latest data indicated that the UF sun lime had an average CT value of between 31 and 33 in these 3 locations. Whereas we were not able to detect any bacterium, the CLAS bacterium that causes HLB, in any of our trees in these 3 sites of the UF red lime. So our initial data suggests that the UF red lime is resistant to HLB, whereas the UF sun lime is highly tolerant to HLB. One of the key questions that I keep getting asked by our stakeholders is how cold tolerant are these finger limes? And we look at them, we don't know, because there's not much data in it. In Australia, you see in that little black in the red box, The finger lime originates from the rainforests of the border regions of Southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales. And as David mentioned earlier, this is a subtropical climate. It's a nice climate and freezing events are rare. So it's unknown if the occasional frost damage that we have here in Lake Alfred or even north of us can cause twig dieback, which can result in young trees being killed. One of our collaborators have mentioned that they had extensive tree damage recently when we had frost damage in Florida. So we decided to do a study to look at how cold tolerant our cultivars were. So we looked at the field performance, and as luck would have it, in January, we had a rare hard freeze in our area in which the wind chills range from 21 to 32 degrees Fahrenheit or -6 Celsius to 0 degrees Celsius for several hours at night. So we decided to do a small experiment to identify if our trees were indeed going to be damaged by this hard chill. So we looked at data for lipid peroxidation, and we found that there was an increase in the malondihyde during the lower temperature weather. So malondihyde is the final product of lipid peroxidation, and this is a sign of cell damage. So higher malondihyde means higher cell membrane damage. So as you can see, when you look at the data, you did see a little bit of cell membrane damage following this enhanced cold stress in both our UF red lime and UF sun lime. However, the content of malondihyde was not very, very high, which indicated that there was not too much cold damage in these cultivars. We also looked at another biochemical marker called total phenolics compounds, and we did a DPPH analysis. Total phenolic compounds is an indication of plant defense response. So it tells us how well the plants are able to defend themselves against some external threat. In this case, the external threat was the cold stress. From our data, we understood that both the UF red lime and the UF sun lime had a slight difference in both TPC and DPPH inhibition percent, which means indirectly that both these cultivars were able to do well in this location, in our Lake Alfred location, despite being subject to a few hours of strong hard freeze. When we went out and looked at the tree, the UF sun lime had no damage on the young flush, while the UF red lime trees in the field had minor leaf burn in some of the younger leaves that were just popping out, especially because we have had a very warm winter this year. So overall, we think that both these cultivars can do well in Florida. Both these cultivars can tolerate cold to a certain extent. We recommend that the UF sun lime can tolerate colder conditions much better than the UF red lime, based on our initial data. So in summary, both UF sun lime and red lime have done well under Central and South Florida conditions. Trees are extremely fast growing in South Florida. Mentioned earlier, red lime trees can go up to 8 feet in height after 2 years in the field. And we have our trees in the field that are just coming into bearing age, and they seem to be doing quite well down south. The sun lime trees, they remain relatively dwarfer compared to the red lime trees, even in South Florida. Our initial results explain that the trees have performed well following the occasional freezes in Central Florida. We do not have any data for North Florida at this time. We are going to be putting in a big planting near Gainesville, and we hope to get more in-field data from areas in which there is prolonged cold stress. But at this point, we do not recommend either of these varieties to be for outdoor cultivation in areas where temperatures can go lower than 32 Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius for extended periods of time, as that may result in extensive twig dieback.
Thank you, Manjul. I take it that, oh, I'm sorry, I
I have a
interrupted
couple
you.
more slides.
Okay,
So
we're running out of time.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So the finger lime trees that we have talked about can be ordered from several different nurseries here that have contracted to propagate them. Philrux Citrus Nursery, Southern Citrus, and I think Brightleaf Nursery has also is also propagating these trees. So you may want to contact them if you want some trees for your groves. Finally, Ruth, I'm done. Last slides. I'd like to acknowledge a lot of my colleagues here, especially Florida Department of Agriculture and the University of Florida, IFAS, and the USDA for providing us funding to work on this very important project.